Hi there, Medical Wildcats. I'm Joseph Guggenheim. I'm a 1972 alum of the medical school. And this month, my topic is the second Chicago fire, which occurred in 1874. You may remember the first Great Chicago Fire occurred in October 1871. And this one is less famous. And you can see in this overhead view, artist concept of where the fire was, it was a much smaller area involved than the 71 fire. This graphic compares the two fires. You can see on the left that both sides of the Chicago River were affected by the fire, whereas in 1874, the smaller picture on the right, only the area south and east of the Chicago River was involved. And the amount of damage and the number of deaths were much smaller in the 1874 fire, but it was still a tragedy. The 1874 fire was confined to the small white area at the bottom of this map where the purple arrow is. The Chicago Tribune nicknamed it the Little Big Fire and the Little Chicago Fire, or the Second Chicago Fire. And the first star closest to the hoist on the Chicago flag represents the 1871 fire. There are no stars or stripes on the flag to represent the 1874 fire. On the map, you can see the difference in the area involved. The 1871 fire burned the red and yellow areas on both sides of the Chicago River all the way north to Fullerton. After the 1871 fire, building regulations were changed. There were no wooden buildings in the area, in the near south area bordered by 22nd Street, which now is Cermak Road, Halstead Street on the west, the Chicago River on the north, and Lake Michigan on the east. After the fire, building inspectors were hired, but they were understaffed and the policies were difficult to enforce. The fire department was organized along military lines. Wooden buildings already in existence in 1874 were grandfathered in, but could not be enlarged, raised, or repaired, except by written permission of the Chicago Board of Public Works. The temporary wooden buildings existing in this area could be erected if they were replaced by brick buildings within a year, but some of the poor residents could not afford a brick building. Metal fire escapes were required for buildings more than 3 stories. 300 night watchmen were hired to spot fires at night. The origin of the 1874 fire, like the 1871 fire, is somewhat unsure. The fire began on Tuesday, July 14th, 1874 at about 4:30 in the afternoon. It was started less than a mile from where the 1871 fire started at DeKoven and Jefferson. The temperature was above 90 degrees on both days, and the weather had been dry for weeks. There was a strong wind from the southwest. The fire probably began in a pile of oily rags. Shop owner Nathan Isaacson was charged with arson. His neighbor, Jacob Wolfson, claimed that Isaacson deliberately set fire to these rags in his own junk shop, but Isaacson was never convicted. Like the day of the 1871 October fire, the July 1874 fire was on a hot, dry day with a temperature greater than 90 degrees. There had been no more than a trace of rain since June, and many buildings in this area were wooden. The fire began at the center of a block bounded by 12th Street, Taylor, Clark, and 4th Avenue, which is now Wabash Avenue. This area was known as Cheyenne. And due to the winds out of the southwest, the fire spread from southwest to northeast. It crossed State Street at about 6:30, 2 hours after it started, and was approaching 4th Street, Wabash Avenue. One of the aldermen asked the mayor to use gunpowder to blow up some of the buildings in this area to serve as a fire break, but the amount of available gunpowder was insufficient. Firefighters tried to drive the fire east to Lake Michigan, where it would burn itself out, although the residences on Michigan Avenue would be lost. Luckily, the fire was extinguished before that happened. This map with north on your left shows where the 1874 fire started at the red arrow. It's at the block surrounded by Clark, Taylor, and 12th Streets. The pink area represents the area burned by the Great Fire of 1871. So you can see that there is overlap. Prior to the 1874 fire, this area consisted of a mixture of small commercial buildings, houses occupied by the poor, and a large number of brothels. The burned area was considered undesirable by many Chicago residents. According to the Tribune, this part of the city consists of the worst rookeries imaginable, most of which are occupied as houses of ill fame. One reporter estimated that more than 500 prostitutes were left homeless. While most of Chicago's well-to-do residents felt badly for the victims of the fire, they were not especially sorry to see these dilapidated buildings disappear. The fire burned the First Baptist Church, which was considered the finest church structure in the city, described as a substantial stone structure. The fire halted just short of Michigan Avenue, and it burned itself out around midnight just south of the Loop. So it only lasted about 7.5 hours compared to the 1871 fire, which lasted about 3 days. There was a moral interpretation of the fire that the fire was a necessary consequence of the sinful activities that were going on in this area. There were many members of ethnic groups in this area, and they blamed the other ethnic groups for the fire. And the fire, according to the New York Times, purged the worst elements, but it also said there must be another fire before the city is fully purged. The National Board of Underwriters demanded changes in Chicago's firefighting prevention and refused to write coverage in October, but many resumed coverage after the municipal government adopted many of the suggested reforms. The real estate and banking industries were already in the middle of a worldwide depression, the Panic of 1873, which probably slowed the reconstruction after the fire. After the 74 fire, there were stricter building regulations, as I mentioned earlier. Larger diameter water mains were replacing the smaller ones. Before the fire, the water main diameters were 4 inches or less, and were often clogged with rust and corrosion. There were demographic changes throughout Chicago also, affecting 3 groups: the affluent residents, the Jewish residents, and the African American residents. The area devastated by the 1874 fire was inhabited mostly by Jewish residents, immigrants, and middle-class Black residents. The fire contributed to the urban development and changes in the demographics. Let's look at the African American residents, how they were affected first. Before the 1874 fire, the majority of African residents lived in an enclave on the north side between 3rd and 4th Avenues. Approximately 85% of the real estate property owned by African Americans was destroyed by the 1874 fire. Their homes burning represented a loss of their only assets that would appreciate to help them build wealth. Many of the African American residents were left homeless by the fire, and they moved southward between 12th and 79th Street to form what eventually became Bronzeville. You can see on this map the black arrow in the near south area where they lived before the fire, and then Bronzeville is the very long, skinny area on the map at the bigger black arrow. The area at the red arrow represents the changes in residences for the Jewish residents, with the large red arrow representing Lawndale, where many of them went after the fire. The African American residents were affected by the officials introducing restrictive covenants that banned Black residents from buying or renting property in the majority white neighborhoods. The policy created what was called Bronzeville, a city within a city, and this became the center of Black life in the late 19th and early 20th century. The affluent residents lived in the Prairie Avenue area, which was bounded by Calumet on the east. Indiana was 1 block west, and Michigan Avenue was 2 blocks west. So this area was only about 3 blocks wide. Upper Prairie Avenue extended from 16th Street on the north to 22nd Street, and Lower Prairie Avenue area consisted of area from 26th Street on the north and ran south for 5 blocks. The area was untouched by both fires, although the residents were scared because it came so close. Lakeshore Drive began to replace the Prairie Avenue district as the most sought-after neighborhood following the move of the of Potter and Bertha Palmer in 1885 to what is now the 1500 block of North Lakeshore Drive. Wealthy residents along Michigan Avenue, the old Michigan Avenue in the south area, saw the flames approaching and feared that this would be a repeat of the 1871 fire. They began packing their belongings and furniture and prepared to leave their homes, but it turned out the fire did not affect their homes. The wire spread the fire quickly. The winds spread the fire rapidly, but the fire went further north as it approached the Prairie Avenue area. And the 1871 fire did not affect the Prairie Avenue area. It just scared the residents. It primarily affected the downtown area. The Jewish community was also affected. Many of them lived in the Maxwell Street area, which is close to where the old maternity center was. This was the most densely populated Jewish community in the city between 1880 and 1920. The neighborhood around the intersection of Maxwell and Halsted was primarily occupied by the Eastern European Jewish community, having previously been home to the German and Irish immigrants. The 1874 fire was disastrous because it left 500 Jewish families homeless and 300 were destitute or lost their business. It also destroyed 2 of their large synagogues. Following the 1871 fire, the Jewish residents began to move south out of the crowded Maxwell Street area. Most of these were Eastern European immigrants or descendants of Eastern European immigrants. A small number moved to the south side or to northern communities, as listed here, especially Rogers Park. By far, the largest number moved to the Lawndale area, which became the largest Jewish community in the history of Chicago, the area that was on the map at the large red arrow. This was 13 miles west of the Loop. After World War II, many of the Jewish residents moved from the Lawndale area into Rogers Park and the Chicago suburbs. So this 1874 fire made changes in the demographics of Chicago, led to improved fire prevention and firefighting, but other fire disasters arose later. Many large fires could and would occur, including the disastrous Iroquois Theater fire and the Union Stockyards fire. The Iroquois Theater fire occurred in 1903, December 30th, between Christmas and New Year's. The theater had been only open a week before the fire occurred, and it was allegedly fireproof, although it had extensive wood trim. Sparks from a spotlight set the curtain on fire. It was the worst single building fire in U.S. history. More than 600 audience members out of 1,000 failed to escape and were killed because the balcony doors were locked to prevent people from moving to better seats. And the performance was on a holiday matinee between Christmas and New Year's, so many audience members were mothers and children. The Union Stockyards fire of 1934 was the second most destructive fire in Chicago history. There was $8 million in property damage, 1 person dead, more than 500 were injured, and somewhere between 400 and 1,000 livestock perished. Like the 1871 and 1874 fires, the Stockyards fire of 1934 was preceded by a dry spell. It was attributed to a motorist throwing a lit cigarette into some hay, but the nearby railroad embankments served as fire stops. Stockyards reopened for business 2 days later on Monday, May 21st. The fire occurred on Saturday, May 19th. Let's get together again virtually next month. In the meantime, stay safe, stay connected, stay healthy, enjoy your summer, and I look forward to our virtual meeting next month.